Ashland is famous for its theater and natural attractions, but the real wealth of this area is some of the people who live here. And one of them is Bill Kauth, who years ago, as a therapist in the Midwest, co-founded the Mankind Project, MKP, which is based on a training over a very intense weekend, followed by integration back in his own community. Thousands of men have graduated from this program all over the world now, and in the Rogue Valley you run into literally hundreds of men who've done the training, which includes shadow work and discovering a sense of mission. Today we talk with Bill Kauth about the origins and impact of this work.
What we do is we initiate adult men into healthy masculinity. And we've been doing this for 25 plus years now. And it's centered around a training called the New Warrior Training Adventure, which is an intense weekend rite of passage for adult men in which they learn emotional literacy and to open their hearts to be truly conscious, present men. They also open their hearts to other men. They get to see the pain and the drama of other men in ways they just never have before. And in this process, they go through a descent and then an ordeal. It's kind of an ordeal of the heart, and then return to the community. So those are the classic components of the initiatory process.
Give an example of emotional literacy, of what you're talking about.
Emotional literacy is simply knowing our feeling body, knowing when we're scared, or when we're sad, or when we're angry, and being able to, in essence, witness it and be with our feeling body, and not be run by it unconsciously. Each man goes into his own heart and finds what we call a mission in life, and it's a transpersonal mission, which means it doesn't have to do with satisfying his own ego self in some way. It's really about caring for the community, which is the classic purpose of rite of passage initiations for men.
So in this society we have initiations only in fraternities and maybe basic training, something like that. It's not much, is it?
Yeah, initiations has essentially been lost in our culture for, I'm guessing, centuries.
So this is all in one intense weekend, or?
It's an intense weekend, and part of the model we've been doing now for 25 years is that after the weekend, the men who have opened their hearts and learned so much actually need to integrate it into their lives, into their own reality. So we offer a follow-up, what we call an integration group. It's basically a men's support group in which the men are trained further in emotional literacy, and conflict resolution is a huge piece, so that they can really embody those skills and bring them back to their families and their workplace and their larger community.
What kind of conflict resolution do people learn?
We teach a model we simply call clearing, which is that when somebody feels a conflict, in this case with another man, they know how to bring it to him with their feeling body active, and they also learn to not assume that they have the truth, but to actually it's a truth inquiry. So they bring their feelings and their judgments and an openness to hearing the other man as part of the clearing up the block or the conflict that exists.
How many men have been through this training and integration?
The Mankind Project now, as of 2011, has approximately 50,000 men around the world. We've got, I'm guessing, 48 chapters right now, solid, established chapters of men around the world in many cities. We're in South Africa and Australia and New Zealand and all across Europe and France and Germany and England, of course. We went into England really early. Oh, how did it start? That's actually a pretty cool story. Is I had been doing out of graduate school a lot of Gestalt training, which means being present to what is, and so I had essentially the eyes to see humans that were developing as part of my. It's like a necessary skill set to be an effective therapist, to be able to observe what kind of changes are happening in people. So I was also tracking what the powerful change, personal growth change, and entities in the culture were. And at that time, it was the women's movement. The women's movement. Women were doing these consciousness raising groups. So week after week, they grew and evolved, and over the years, they became a significant social force. So as a therapist, I actually identified as a feminist therapist, which meant that in my therapy sessions, I had an authentic relationship with my clients. I wasn't just playing an abstract role. So as a feminist therapist, I got invited through a friend to go to their biannual Wisconsin Feminist Therapists Association meeting. And while I was there, I went to a couple of the little breakout sessions, and I was in the lobby, and something happened to me. I looked around and I saw all these beautifully conscious, interdependent humans, and I noticed that of the 125 of us, I was the only guy, and something came over me, and it was like this sort of a divine call. You could actually call it that. That it was like I was struck, like somebody's got to do something for the men. And I tried to push it away inside, but it was like the call was in, and it was like I was obsessed from that point on. And I saw my friend Ron Herring, who I'd been in Gestalt work with for a couple of years, and he was a PhD in curriculum at the University of Wisconsin. And I said, Ron, we've got to do something for the men. And he went, geez, Bill, I don't even know what you're talking about, but I've got 5 sons, and I like your energy. Whatever you're up to, I'm in. Wow. And about that same time, I had gotten to know this fellow named Rich Tosi, who was working with General Motors at the time. And part about him I didn't know, which was really important retrospectively, is that he had done 10 years in the United States Marine Corps. But we had been in an emotional, cathartic training thing for several months together. So I had also seen his heart. I had seen him, just cry and rage and sob and do all those kind of things that men don't normally do. So I knew his heart. And I spontaneously invited him. And he also said, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to work with men? But, I like your energy. Whatever you're up to, I'm in. So, from then on, that was early in 1984. And by late 1984, we had spent a lot of time, as the legend goes, sitting around Tosi's kitchen table, cobbling this thing together. And, each of us brought a kind of a genius. And each of us, at some level, were also kind of, naive guys from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, of all places. And we didn't know anything about archetypes. We didn't know anything about initiation, but we knew something had to happen. And by...
Now, when you say cobbling this thing together, you're talking about the training.
Yes, cobbling together this training that we when we launched it, actually, in January of '85, we called it the Wild Man Weekend. Once men start opening their hearts, once there's a place safe enough for men to open their hearts, they love it. It's like, build it and they will come. And we did. We built it. We built this safe place. And we call it a safe container. So safe containers is what we're brilliant at. And once there's a safe place for men to come and be authentic, they just love it. And it's a huge, huge gift to them, and then that becomes a gift to their wives and to their kids and then to their community, and it keeps radiating out. And I want to talk a little bit about radiating out, because each man, as we talked a little earlier, has a transpersonal mission, which means that at some point in his developmental process, and being in these men's support groups, they find a love with other men that most of them have never known before. And there's a kind of a stability and a sense of fulfillment in that. And when the men get to that place, there is actually like nothing to do but to give. And at the point where they feel like they need to give, instead of take in this sort of grasping culture, they have their mission right there waiting for them, and they start doing projects, and they go out and they build an initiation for teenagers, or they'll build projects to work with women or with men in prison, or it goes on and on and on. We literally launched thousands and thousands and thousands of amazing giving social projects around the world through our work by opening men's hearts. I'm so proud of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea of giving is certainly foreign to the mainline business culture. And you're saying that people feel a kind of a relief and excitement when in this container and with this mission they can invent.
Living in a consumerist taker society is not particularly satisfying for anybody. It's just it's like an addiction. It's like shopping in lieu of living. And what we're doing is creating actually places where men can live and learn to give. And as I've been observing this for the last 25 years, I've learned to kind of perceive the worldviews that we live in. And the obvious one that's coming in is what I've come to call the giver culture. It's the next iteration of human worldviews coming into play. And I'm proud of that too. We've been at the forefront of offering men this opportunity to open their hearts in such a way so that they experience giving. And it becomes what we really want to do. Heart opening, it's like such a big issue. It's like being present, being authentic, knowing who we really are. And what makes that significant is that we live in a culture in which we've been almost trained to not tell the truth about who we are, to pretend to be more powerful or competent than we believe we are. So the process of healing healing those wounds, is the process of finding enough trust, and I alluded earlier to a safe space, or what we call a safe container, in which we can actually begin to go in and speak about our wounding, what we call wounding, our shadows, that part of us that we haven't known before, that in the safe space we allow to come up. And the feelings that haven't been acceptable, perhaps our rage or our fear or our deep sadness or our grief. And virtually all of us have those. And there's something about modern culture that has just led us to do an awful lot of lying about who we are inside. We don't know we're doing it until we actually discover it. And that's part of the opening process that we can do in a safe group. All indigenous cultures, when the babies are born, they stay right with the mother for 2 years, mostly in skin contact, so that the nurturing continues. And physiologically we need that, but most of the men in our culture, that's been destroyed, that's been broken. And so there's a kind of a wound that's pre-verbal, so we can't speak it, but it's in us. And to heal that one requires being in a safe community. And I think that the men's support groups that last for years, and there's some that have gone on for 10, 20 years, provide that safe nurturing place where even those pre-verbal wounds can be healed.
At the beginning of many meetings in Ashland, Oregon, people check in. Now, is this really a new warrior thing?
Yeah. Actually, we've got some very, very simple skills that we do in our groups that become part of the men who do them over and over and over, week after week, year after year. And then they start going to other meetings, and instead of just diving into business, the men will invite that group to check in. Just say what's happening for you in your life right now. Perhaps an emotional, sharing, which bonds those groups, even in business settings. I heard one great story where a young brother, he was crossing a state border and he got picked up for something, and he had some marijuana on him or something, so he got stuck in jail for several months. And what he started doing with the other prisoners is checking in every day. Next thing you know, the prisoners were having such a good time, the guards just hardly knew what to do with them.
Now, people make fun, as you have noted, of drums in the woods and maybe talismans or animal names or so on.
Yes.
What can you say about this?
Well, from the outside, it looks funny. It's like they used to laugh at the funny hats that the fraternity guys wore back, a century ago. But you know what most people don't know is that those men from those fraternities with the funny hats, the reason that they gathered in fraternities back in the late 1800s is that that was the period when the Industrial Revolution was coming in. And the men were going into the mines and factories, and they'd often get killed. And their families were then left alone, virtually abandoned. So what the men did is they started gathering together and bonding and connecting in ritual process. And so the Elks and the Moose and the Masons and the Oddfellows and the Knights of Pythias all emerged during that era as a social safety net to take care of each other and their families. And then as we moved into the next century, oil came in and wealth and prosperity that was just, it made it such so that the government could take over those social safety net functions, and the old fraternal groups sort of lost their reason for being, and they just became guys in funny hats. But here's what's really splendid is that it's like the work we're doing now, which is bonding men through their hearts, which also bonds their families, is probably going to become very, very necessary shortly, and it already is, because we can see at this point in 2011 that a lot of our systems are breaking down. You know, our energy system and our financial system is so obvious to see how it's breaking down, and our medical system, our legal systems are all, they've kind of hit a wall. There needs to be a way that we can take care of each other, and from that place recreate this new culture coming in. I've alluded to that. I see it as the gift culture coming in. And I see MKP, the brothers, really, really well positioned to actually step into the process of creating the new culture at this point.
So you said that MKP is well positioned to take leadership at this time in history. What do you mean?
Well, as I suggested, the systems that had been created 100 years ago have stopped working for the consciousness that is showing up in the world, and the transition from the old culture, the old systems, to the new culture is going to require people that have a consciousness and an ability to see forward, and the ability to be creative. And I suggested earlier that each man has a transpersonal mission in life, and the ability to open our hearts, literally. That sounds almost goofy, but there's something in that allows presence. It allows me to be right here authentically with you, and that allows trust. So the new culture coming in is going to be rooted in trust as opposed to like legal sanctions. That was the old way, and we're essentially done with that. For cultures that are evolving, we're actually moving into a culture of the gift. I call it the gift culture, and that involves trust. And the men of the Mankind Project have been practicing this for 25 years, and I think many of us are so ready to step into the leadership. And there's another piece in this which I think is quite beautiful. It hasn't quite manifested yet. I keep looking at it, which is that there is a way of making a living, of actually generating the money to take care of us by using these skills out in the world. So I keep inviting social entrepreneurs, social artists, the men and the women that have those skills to step forward and trust their creativity to build ways of teaching this new way of being in the world.
Now that's Gene Houston's term, social artists, and social entrepreneurs is wonderful.
And Jim Shannon calls us social architects.
Social architects.
Social inventors is the word I've been using for a
And
long
Jim
time.
Shannon is...
Oh, he's a very creative guy that lives in Hawaii. He's actually the guy that they made the movie Men Who Stare at Goats after him. And I just love his level of creativity. He, for decades, literally, he has suggested that. He was a military guy. That's why they made the movie about him. He created the 1st Earth Battalion, literally, within the U.S. Army, if you see that movie. But he's also suggested for years that with a shift in consciousness, we can actually do it. We can actually use the Navy to clean up the ocean, the Army to clean up the land. And I think the Marines protect the internet. I think the Air Force, of course, their job would be to clean up the air. So it's like we have all of these possibilities that are sitting there waiting for this shift of us, we the people, to say, do it this way. Let's do it. It's time.
Now, what about the next 25 years or the next 5 years for MKP? What do you envision?
Oh, the next iteration for MKP is reaching out more broadly, is kind of going public, really allowing ourselves to be seen for the magnificence of what we have done. And because we've been so focused in, we haven't taken the time to share, like the brilliance of our transpersonal mission, catalyzing remarkable social service projects all over the world. We haven't spoken about that. Nobody knows about it. We also are going to begin reaching out to helping professionals, therapists who are working with men, and especially in these difficult times of financial contraction. It's very, very hard for men. It's like their reason for being is disappearing. The suicide rates are up. So hopefully there's going to be more men going into therapy to do the work to be able to cope with the changes in the world. And for therapists who know who we are and what we do, they also know that there's a point of readiness when a man is ready to go and learn a whole nother level of trust. And they can make a referral of that man into the new warrior training, and then they guide him to integrate it when he gets back. So we provide a kind of a service of transformation for men that allows them to kind of flow in a good way with the stuff that's going on in the world, and to be able to adapt and care for their families and figure out a better way to make a living. And I keep looking ahead to what's coming, and I'm hopeful, as I said earlier.
Hopeful. What's the basis of the hope?
The hope is that I finally have, to keep it really simple, I've kind of mutated from doomer to seeing the extraordinary brilliance of the wealth and the competence and the wisdom of humankind. And the spread of knowledge now with the internet is unprecedented would be to underrate it. We're moving very, very rapidly into this new culture. And what's interesting is that many of these creative, new collaborative social inventions are coming from people under 30. So it's like, there are kids and grandkids. They get it. They grew up knowing this as their truth.
So being 25 years old, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the fact that we are working with indigenous cultures around the world, that we're opening men's hearts all over the world, and as we move into the new culture. And finally, I'm very proud that we have 10,000 men every single week sitting in the integration groups opening their hearts with other men. There's 1,000 groups someplace in the world every week where men are sitting and learning to love and know and care for each other.
Many episodes of Like Wow have ended with a brief essay by John Fisher-Smith. John is one of the first people I had the good fortune to meet after arriving in Ashland about a decade ago. A retired architect, he's married to Dot, an artist and activist who's also been on this show. Today, John is going to talk about serving as a mentor in the Boys to Men program. Welcome back, John.
Thank you, Craig. Pleasure to be here. I call this piece Breaking the Cycle. For nearly a decade now, I've enjoyed the privilege of volunteering as a mentor on Boys to Men weekends. I love the work of breaking an old oppressive cycle and initiating and guiding a new one that is nonviolent and collaborative. Like most people, I grew up under parents who had grown up in an authoritarian, top-down, power-over system where feelings were irrelevant, mostly unnoticed. Didn't you?
This is in the north of England, where you grew up.
In the West.
But it could be anywhere.
Could be anywhere in the West, yeah. This society of ours tends to be oppressive, and children are at the bottom of the pecking order. Unfortunately, those who grow up under oppression generally pass it on by oppressing their children too. I did. Didn't you? On the other hand, some parents today, in reaction to this authoritarian model, can be overly permissive, giving their children too much license. Such children may suffer a lack of guidance and discipline. Too often this results in adults without boundaries, who, as they seek to be loved, are unable to respect the boundaries of others. I know all about oppression. I was brought up from the age of 8 in a British boarding school under headmaster Sandy Keating.
Boy.
Mr. Keating had been a British Army major in the Raj in India and didn't hesitate to use his bamboo cane on our backsides whenever he caught us breaking the rules. I might paraphrase Sandy Keating's joyless projection. "If I can't enjoy a rollicking pillow fight after lights out, why should you?" In our Southern Oregon Boys to Men trainings, we're learning and practicing changing our behavior from that power-over model of our society, which shames, diminishes, and punishes the powerless, to a power-with model, which empowers and fosters self-esteem in children. To do this work, I needed to heal my own wounded inner child. The inner mentor training, a prerequisite for staffing, helped me trust and heal that needy child who felt unworthy of love. I'd taken it on. I had taken on, if they didn't treat me right, then maybe I'm not worthy of being loved, you know? Boys to Men is all about developing emotional intelligence, both our own and the boys. Since most youth are embedded in the power-over model at school and at home too, we practice restoring the power balance with them, helping them develop trust in others and in their own feelings. Once they experience how effective they can be with other boys and with us adult men, their self-esteem grows quite naturally. When we see a boy acting out, instead of judging his behavior as wrong or bad and then shaming him for it or punishing him, we want to pay attention. Be curious. Ask what's happening with him, what he might be feeling. What does he need? What is working or not working in this situation? Through warm, caring conversation and his observation of others' learning, it is quite natural for a boy to self-correct his behavior. As an example, parents are overjoyed when their son starts helping around the house without even being asked. We found the boys show more caring for each other following these trainings. I'm really grateful to be helping Boys to Men nurture this new, collaborative, nonviolent approach.